But then, Mr. Commissioner.
Okay, good afternoon to everyone tuning in. I think this is the last session. Thank you for coming back. And we are joined by the Consumer Protector of the Eastern Cape's office. We are also joined by the HOD, Ms. Mama. And Ms. Ferreira, can you hear me? Are you able to hear us?
Yes, thank you very much. I can hear you.
Thank you, Ms. Ferreira. And thank you also for being flexible in respect of your presentation. We've had a very long 4 days, so you being able to assist us and coming to the table now is really helpful. Thank you so much. Without any further ado, I'm going to give you over to Commissioner Sibanyoni.
Good afternoon, Ms. Ferreira. Can you hear me?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah,
I can hear you.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is J.B. Sibanyoni. I'm a commissioner at the Human Rights Commission. I'm going to administer an oath to you, but before doing that, I would like to establish whether you've got any objection in taking the prescribed oath, because if that is the case, we can make an affirmation.
No, sir, I have no objection to taking the oath.
Okay, thank you. For record purposes, will you please just state your full names and surnames, please, for record purpose?
Jeanette Ann Ferreira.
Thank you. Do you swear that the information that you are going to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If that is the case, will you please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God"?
So help me God.
Thank you very much. You may then proceed with your presentation, Ms. Ferreira.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Prior to that, I would just like to, if you don't mind, take a minute or two to introduce the HOD as well as the General Manager for Economic Development, Ms. Mama, and then GM, please, as they are supporting and they are the lead department for the Office of the Consumer Protector. Thank you, sir.
Before that, are they also going to add or comment after you make the presentation?
They may add or present after, depending on the questions that are raised, sir.
Yes. To make it easy, let me then administer the oath before you begin making your presentation, so that there should be no necessity to administer the oath. Can they maybe indicate whether they've got any objection towards taking the prescribed oath, but starting by saying their full names for record purpose? The first one.
Okay, I'll start. My name is Miki Mamba. I'm the head of department. I don't have any objections in taking the oath.
And the second one.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Boniswa Koneti. I have no objections in taking the oath. Thank you.
Let me start with Mama. Do you swear that the information that you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If that is the case, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
The second person, will you please confirm that what you are going to present or add will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you so much. Then, Ms. Ferreira, you may start with the presentation.
Thank you, sir. I'll load it now. Sorry, Chair, will you advise whether it's loaded?
Yes, I think we can see it. It's now just, you need to show it in terms of presentation view. We can see the slides. The screen is though blank. We can see on the right hand, your presentation is ready. There we go. Perfect. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much. So this is the presentation into the inquiry by the South African Human Rights Commission. It's a provincial inquiry into the right to food and child malnutrition, which has created a number of deaths within the province of the Eastern Cape. The Office of the Consumer Protector is established within the Provincial Department of Economic Development. Hence my request that the Head of Department as well as the General Manager for Economic Development attend. We all work together as a team to ensure that consumer rights are protected within the Eastern Cape. Then the purpose and responsibility of the Office of the Consumer Protector is the protection of the rights of consumers, to encourage, facilitate and monitor voluntary compliance, to encourage free flow of truthful information in the marketplace. Consumer education and awareness is a key aspect of the work that we undertake. And we are also responsible for receiving, advising and handling of consumer complaints. Our mandate comes from the Constitution, specifically Schedule 4, Part A, which states that consumer protection is a legislative mandate concurrent with national and provincial legislation. So both national and provincial can legislate on how they wish to protect consumers within South Africa and within the province. The province, or the National Act is the Consumer Protection Act, which deals mainly with consumer rights, provides for consumer education. In terms of the province, Section 84 states that we can facilitate, mediate disputes within the province, and it also encourages the facilitation and monitoring of voluntary compliance. More specifically, to give effect to the Consumer Protection Act, which is at national level, and to align the province 100% with the national legislation, the Eastern Cape Provincial Legislature in 2018 passed the Eastern Cape Consumer Protection Act 3 of 2018, which came into operation on the 1st of June 2020. Now, this provincial act provides for the realization and protection of rights within the province of the Eastern Cape. It establishes the Office of the Consumer Protector. It also establishes the Provincial Consumer Court. It empowers the office to investigate consumer complaints, and it regulates the manner in which such investigations and processes may occur, which will be aligned to all your constitutional, I always call them umbrella legislation, like your PAJA, your PAIA, matters like that, is all included within the provincial legislation. I'm sure you're aware that the consumer rights are named within the Consumer Protection Act. We, as the Eastern Cape, did not include specific rights within our provincial legislation. We rather adopted we opted to be able to rely on the national legislation to give guidance on the rights, and that as a province, we would create our processes and procedures to ensure that we were able to implement the national legislation. So we have a right to equality, privacy, to choose, disclosure of information, fair and responsible marketing, fair and honest dealing, fair, just and reasonable terms and conditions, and most importantly, relating to this commission, would be the right to fair value, good quality and safety. As I said, our rights are not included in our provincial legislation. However, they are included in the national legislation. All we have done, all the legislature has done, is given the Office of the Consumer Protector and the department the necessary powers to be able to implement the Act. So we rely on the definition of defect within the Consumer Protection Act. We rely on failure within the National Act, hazard as well as unsafe, which means that due to any characteristic failure, defect or hazard, particular goods present an extreme risk of personal injury or property damage to a consumer or to other persons. Furthermore, every consumer has a right to receive goods that are reasonably suitable for the purposes for which they are generally intended, of good quality, in good working order, and free of any defects. They will be usable and durable for a reasonable period of time, having regard to the use to which they would normally be put, and also ensure that there's compliance within the standards set out by the Standards Act. Of importance, even though you will note that food and child malnutrition may not be the primary mandate of the Office of the Consumer, I felt, and the department felt, we needed to indicate that we are acting in a proactive manner, and that the Office of the Consumer Protector, with the regional officers, the regional directors, has collaborated with various stakeholders to improve services and protection of consumers within the Eastern Cape. We collaborate greatly with law enforcement agencies. We've had a program where we've worked with environmental health services with the municipalities, who have the powers to actually take seizure and of goods that are of poor quality, and to actually follow the Criminal Procedure Acts. Another very close stakeholder that we have, and the reason why I've included this stakeholder here, is because we will give you an explanation just now as to how important our work is with collaborating with various stakeholders, is the National Credit Regulator, and then of course you have your National Regulator for Compulsory Specifications. I wish to add that in Q4 of 2019-2020, the Department of Economic Development, through the Office of the Consumer Protector, hosted the World Consumer Rights Celebration. So it was a week-long event which commenced, not commenced our education and awareness, but it was sort of the kickoff for our compliance promotion initiatives within the Eastern Cape, which brought a number of stakeholders in, and quite a number of goods were seized during that period. So that was our initial kickoff on this project. We do need to, however, address the fact that SPAZA shops are a crucial part of our informal economy, and a lifeline to many of our poorer communities in terms of access to goods and services. So it is therefore important that we ensure that they are compliant with consumer protection laws, and that is one of our mandates when we go out on compliance and enforcement raids. We call them blitzes, together with our key stakeholders. It's not a case of just compliance. It's actually a case of educating and making awareness, especially to SPAZA shops and within the poorest of the poor communities and the rural township community. We need to state we've gone through our records. We have not received any complaint relating to the nature of the inquiry, nor have we received complaints relating to the nature of the inquiry. However, we are aware of the food safety concerns for SPAZA shops. You'll see in our presentation later, and the collaborations are assisting the Office of the Consumer Protector, especially with our South African Police Services and our environmental health services at municipalities, of matters that are arising that we are which we don't have a specific mandate for, but we work in collaboration and in participation with those stakeholders. So, as I say, the major stakeholder is your environmental health services, who from the municipalities who we work very closely with. So, and most of our blitzes are in rural areas. However, we do not publish the fact as to where that's going to happen. Unfortunately, we've had two scenarios where somehow the information was leaked, and by the time the blitz started, all the criminal evidence or what was reported to be at the places where the blitz was to take place had been moved, and the stores were closed. I think it's important for us to now draw attention to our compliance initiatives, which commenced, as I said, from World Consumer Rights Day. We work with electronic communications equipment and SAPS, where electronic communication equipment was confiscated for safekeeping by CASA. There were different health products like ARVs, cough mixture, herbal teas, and other tablets. The health tablets which were expired, and the packets were seized and booked in by the SAPS. Then, not really necessary for this presentation, however, no refund, no exchange. If a person should buy unsafe goods or unsafe foods or foods that are not by the sell-by date, this would come into effect, because should there be a defect with the goods, there is a right to exchange the goods or to receive a full refund. But however, the next project that we are working on is substandard building materials, which we are working on with SABS as well as the National Regulator for Compulsory Specifications. There is paraffin being sold without a permit. Warnings were issued there. Foods not good for human consumption, and expired goods, they were taken by the Environmental Health Services and seized and then taken to the dumping site to be destroyed. The expiry dates on processed foods that were tampered with, where people put new prices or they stick on things over the actual labels on the goods. There was a fine of 1,300 Rand issued for non-compliance at one of the stores that we were part of. The inspection, improper shelving, where foodstuffs are packed on shelves with disinfectants and poisonous goods. There was education and awareness about the regulations. And as I say, we do education and awareness in in compliance, will together with compliance. A big problem that we picked up within the Eastern Cape, which we deal with, is unhygienic business areas, because the SPAZA shops, or the shops, are being used as both a dwelling place where people sleep and bath in the same area as they are selling foodstuffs. Okay, now I know I referred to the National Credit Regulator, but what is of importance here was that during November 2019, the National Credit Regulator, in collaboration with the Office of the Consumer Protector and the South African Police Services, conducted various raids in the Serra-Bartman region, specifically Jeffreys Bay, Somerset East, and Humansdorp. In one of those raids, it resulted in a cornerstone judgment when it was taken to the National Consumer Tribunal. Why it is so important is that the tribunal found that a consumer cannot use child support or foster care grant or anything in relation to a grant being provided to a child as income to obtain credit when conducting an affordability assessment. So what was found was a number of SASSA cards, not for disability grants or such, or older persons' pensions, but rather it was foster care and childcare grants. Those grants are to the benefit of the child. It's not to the benefit of the third party. So that was a finding that was made due to investigations held within the Eastern Cape. Furthermore, with the National Regulator of Compulsory Specifications, I'm sure you're all aware of the deaths that occurred within the Eastern Cape relating to the noodle saga. So during December 2021, the Serra-Bartman region as well was collaborated with the National Regulator for Compulsory Specifications. They conducted an inspection on the noodle factory, which is located within the Eastern Cape. Due to the deaths of the young children who had consumed the noodles, and it was assumed that they were poisoned. So we conducted that inspection with the NRCS. They were checking if the goods were compliant in terms of weight, manufacturing lines, if the product was properly packaged and sealed, and whether the legal metrology testing was correct. Samples of the noodles were tested, and whilst they were not 100% compliant, they did pass the inspection and were warned that if they are not careful, they could tip the scale and be found to be non-compliant, relating to future goods being confiscated. And now I just want to show you some of the photographs of our initiatives in pictures. They say a picture tells 1,000 words. So there you will note some of the products that have been confiscated and the state that the SPAZA shop was in, with the cooking pans, and where people are staying within the SPAZA shop. There you will see goods that have expired, that were confiscated and then seized and dumped by the SAPS. This is an idea of, where warnings were left, because you can see you've got petrol, paraffin. This is a highly dangerous situation, which could cause high risk health and safety to anybody should there be an explosion as such, as well as the obvious threat of contamination of other foodstuffs. And then lastly, this is a team that is you will see that we are with the SAPS, we are with the Environmental Health Services. We are clearly identified in terms of our we call it reflective vests, so that everybody knows that these officials form part of the Office of the Consumer Protector, and it also shows the collaboration with other stakeholders. And I want to thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Ferreira, for the presentation. Commissioner Sibanyoni, do you have any questions?
Thank you very much, Ms. Ferreira. You spoke about the service that you are providing in an area that is extremely rural. My question is, what is the level of awareness to people who are shortchanged that they can report to the Consumer Protection Council? And I'm asking that question because assume a person has purchased something, and then after traveling a long distance, and that person realized that the good has expired. Now, will that person resort to lodging a complaint, or will that person weigh the efforts that will be undertaken in lodging a complaint and or challenging the seller of that goods, rather than just disposing of the article or of the good? That's the question that I would like to ask. Ms. Ferreira?
Sorry, okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. As I say, we have a very, very strong education and awareness system that sort of leads and guides consumers. We have the head office of the Consumer Protector, which consists of 4 staff members. Then we also have 6 regional officers throughout the province who have walk-in and customers. We receive complaints via email, and we have a share call center which is advertised. In terms of legislation, however, a consumer first needs to lodge a complaint with the service provider. So once, for example, the person goes from, let's say, Port Elizabeth to Uitenhage, it's a short distance, but I'm just giving an example. They then should call or telephone the store and lodge a complaint. Thereafter, they can either email us, they can contact us, they can call our call center, and then we attempt to the best of our ability within our regions to assist that consumer. However, it is a prerequisite that a complaint must be lodged first with the service provider, giving them an opportunity to remedy and provide redress to the consumer. Thank you.
Namakwetla, do you have a question?
Thank you very much, Ms. Ferreira. Now, when you do your investigation and you find that the expired goods and food not suitable, can you just repeat the fine with that? And also, when you find dates tampered with, how do you take action on that? Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you very much for the question. Um, uh, th- because these matters are not specifically within the mandate of the Office of the Consumer Protector, that is the reason why we have developed a stakeholder relationship with the various stakeholders. So normally there won't be a single blitz or investigation that we go out on without the SAPS there with the necessary powers, as well as the environmental health services of the municipality, because they have a mandate to ensure that these goods are removed and not tampered with. I do need to note that we are busy now with our, excuse me, with the regulations, which will be published shortly. The regulations there do make it a criminal offence to tamper with any of the sell-by dates or any of the goods relating to food, and also to tamper with pricing. So once those regulations are passed, we will be able to have a wider mandate. I think I should also make it or advise that the majority, we have got some new officials, but 30 officials from the Office of the Consumer Protector underwent training last year to be peace officers, and all 30 officials passed that training and have been found competent to be peace officers, and we are now just in the process of making the necessary applications so that we can then apply to the Minister of Justice to make officials within the Eastern Cape peace officers, which will then provide the officials with greater powers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ferreira. Just one or two questions from my side. We've heard throughout the past few days that there's a tendency to a lot of food wastage within the country, and it's obviously as well within the province. And we've also been informed that there might be hesitance in respect of donating food before they expire, as opposed to just making them available for animal feed or throwing them away, it ending up in landfill sites. Now, in respect to the legislation that regulates donations, food donations, does the consumer protector have a role to play there? Especially looking at the fact that one can legislate provincially as well. Is there an opportunity for us to look at that donation legislation or the regulation of donations, rather food stuff, so as to facilitate and promote the donation of food as opposed to wastage? I'm not sure whether I'm barking at the wrong tree here, but I'll allow you to respond just now. Then, when it comes to, you've mentioned unhygienic business areas and potentially areas where food is being prepared. How far does that extend? And why I'm asking that is you have to remember we're focusing on child nutrition here. And in certain instances, you will have a school that is preparing food, and that in an environment that might not be hygienic. Is that something that the consumer protector would look at, or which would fall under your scope? And if so, what steps would then be taken? Bearing in mind that we've also heard that in some instances, load shedding would play a role here. But the meal that would be prepared would be potentially the only meal that a child would receive on the day. So when that child is in fact then suffering from, let's say, food poisoning, and you get to the school and you see that the environment is in fact not conducive to prepare food, Do you take into consideration these factors, the factors that the environment is not conducive vis-a-vis the need for children to be fed? And I can pose that premise to you against the donation issue as well. Do you take into consideration, say for instance, the food that was consumed was maybe expired vis-a-vis the need to address hunger? So it's more of a contextual issue, and I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the questions. In terms of the food wastage, I know you mentioned you may be barking up the wrong tree. I'm not going to say no. It is a matter that I would, as the consumer protector within the province, have to investigate and see whether we have, what the mandate of that legislation is. So unfortunately, I cannot give you a straight up answer because it doesn't fall directly and squarely within our mandate. So my answer to that is I can research that, and then as a department, we could look into it as perhaps a program to look into in terms of whether we have legislation or how we can partner with national bodies to try and move forward and assist with this, because I do agree that providing food donations is much better than taking it and throwing it in a dump and burning it. Rather, put a policy in place that by a certain date, but that's just my personal feelings. So that's my answer to that. As well as to the looking at the facilitation and promotion of the donations. As I say, I would need to research the necessary legislation and ascertain where that would fall under and under which jurisdiction, because we are a juristic body. Well, we are bound by our legislation and we're not able to step outside of it. However, as you've noticed, we've made a number of collaborative issues where even when we go with our enforcement agencies to assist, we are called on by them to provide guidance in terms of the Consumer Protection Act. Then in terms of what we would do, the child nutrition and the facilities and how food is cooked is also not squarely within our mandate. However, that is the reason why we developed the strong program that we have with the municipalities, environmental health services. They have the mandate and we also work with the Department of Labour and the Department of Home Affairs. It depends on where we're going to, what we're doing. We can't be sure until after the event as to who all will be present. But also, again, jurisdically, that does not fall under our mandate. However, we do then, should we be, or any of our regions, or any of us, or should we as Office of the Consumer Protection become aware of such problem, a big role that we play within the Eastern Cape is most of the regulators that regulate these matters are in Gauteng. They are sitting some in Cape Town, but mostly in the Gauteng area, which means they don't always get an opportunity to get to our province. So that is why our consumer education and awareness programs are so key. And secondly, I always say that we are the pipeline of our people to the regulators that are sitting at national. So the minute we see that it's not within our jurisdiction, we will immediately bring in a regulator within whose jurisdiction it falls. I hope that answers your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ferreira. Yeah, I think that it does open the door also for further discussion. And I appreciate your comment, which says that donating food that is, still consumable, it might be better than wastage. And potentially one has to look at facilitating that process a bit better, whether we are, periphery stakeholders or the key implementer. I think that's a process one can undertake and a conversation that one can start. So I appreciate your submission on that. Commissioner Sibanyoni, anything from your side as a parting note?
Ms. Ferreira, you'll pardon me for this question. With a naked eye, a noodle, a person will not be able to see whether it has expired and the like. So what would be your advice for people to be careful not to consume noodles that have expired? We know that tea can stay for long and the like, but also noodles are dry. One may think that they are still worth consuming.
Thank you for the question. In terms of the Consumer Protection Act, you have to have a produced by date and a sell by date. So when we do our education and awareness in relation to food safety, we always advise consumers to make sure that they check the produce date and the sell by date. Another issue that we advise consumers, it may, I don't know, you will note that there's big sales that go on, like Black Friday, and that where goods are sold at phenomenally low prices, and people think that they're getting a bargain. So we've also got the Black Friday campaign that we have to say, consumers, look at what you're buying. It may be cheap. So it may be a good that normally would cost 10 Rand. But if you look at the actual sell by date and you as a consumer go and buy 10 of those items, are you going to be able to consume those 10 items within the time period before the sell by date or the use by date? So that is our advice as part of our campaigns in terms of our safety, health and safety, as well as our Black Friday campaign. You know, sometimes if things look too good to be true, it's normally not. And you stay away. So that's my comment. Thank you very much.
As for anything parting note from your side, thank you, Commissioner Makwetla. That brings us to the end of your presentation. I do think it's a very very valuable information to have, especially for us here in the province. And I do think our engagement as the Commission provincially will continue with you from here. I think there's some shared interests that we can definitely embark on and exploit. So thank you so much for your presentation, and as well as the presence of the HOD and colleagues. With that, we do release you from this inquiry. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I think that has, Program Director, brought us to the end of in terms of the inquiry. If there's any further submissions from members of the public, we do encourage them to send us an email at the email address that was provided during our media statements as well, to allow us to take that into consideration. And just as a parting note, there will be a report drafted from these proceedings once the evidence has been deliberated upon, and the report will then be issued by the Commission with findings, recommendations, and/or directives. Commissioner Sibanyoni, would you like to make a final comment?
Okay, let me take this opportunity and thank each and every participants who have made a presentation, and also to thank the Office of the South African Human Rights Commission in the Eastern Cape, and also not forgetting the interpreters and the organization that has enabled this inquiry to be live streamed. And then we hope and we strongly believe that it is a milestone that has been achieved. And then I would like just to say that we are looking forward that the Human Rights Commission will produce a report, and then this report will be shared, and eventually it will be published. And then it is talking to the right to food as contained in Section 27 of the Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, Act number 108 of 1996. And then also specifically Section number 28 of Chapter 2, which talks about every child has got a right to basic nutrition. And then we are looking forward that the food insecurity is something that will be overcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Sibanyoni. Commissioner Makwetla, any final comments?
Yeah, just also to say that it was a very fruitful exchange of information, and we do look forward to taking it further. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Makwetla, and also for the program director and everyone who has worked very hard to make this inquiry happen. A heartfelt thank you from my side and all the participants. Commissioner Sibanyoni, may I ask you to close the inquiry as the chairperson?
Thank you very much. At this time, if you can remind me, what is the time now? 1:45. At 1:45. That is at 1:45 today on the 12th of August 2022. I hereby declare the inquiry officially closed.